In the silence of rural Michoacán, the night is pierced by headlights crawling across dirt roads. A convoy advances slowly, engines growling in the dark. Then, silence. For a heartbeat, it seems nothing will happen. Until a single gunshot cracks the night wide open. Gunfire erupts in waves. Muzzle flashes dance through the dark as men scream and vehicles burn. When dawn breaks, the land is quiet again. The only sound, the hiss of fire devouring what's left. A message remains, spray-painted in blood-red letters across crumbling walls: Mencho manda. Mencho rules. In Mexico's underworld, a single name now commands fear. A name more whispered than spoken. A name deadlier than El Chapo. He is Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. But the world knows him as El Mencho. He was not born into power. He was born into poverty, tending avocados under the unforgiving sun. He dropped out of school. Crossed into the United States. Arrested for selling drugs. Deported, forgotten. But from the ashes of old cartels, he built something new. Something brutal. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel. This was no ordinary cartel. It was an army. An army that declared war not just on rivals, but on Mexico itself. They shot down a military helicopter. Burned buses in city streets. Turned towns into battlegrounds. Every act of violence carried one purpose: to send a message: CJNG bows to no one. And at the heart of it all is a man no one sees. A ghost. A shadow who rules through whispers. How did a farmer's son from Michoacán rise to become the most wanted drug lord alive? How did El Mencho surpass El Chapo, and turn fear itself into power? You're watching True Crime Cartel Original. Before we dive into today's story, I have a small favor to ask. If you enjoy deep, real stories like this, tap that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. It helps more than you know. Now, let's get into the story. Long before he was the most wanted man alive, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes was just a boy in Aguililla, Michoacán, a small farming town nestled among rugged mountains and endless groves of avocados. Life here was harsh. Poverty was not the exception, it was the rule. For young Nemesio, school ended in the 3rd grade. His future seemed destined for the fields. Like many in Aguililla, he worked the land, but the soil gave little. Hunger and hardship carved discipline into his bones, and silence into his character. But beyond the hills, whispers carried stories of another path. The drug trade. Fast money. Power. Fear. For many young men, this was the only escape. In the 1980s, Nemesio crossed into the United States, seeking work, but finding crime. In California, he was arrested for heroin trafficking. His sentence: deportation. For most, deportation would end the story. But for Nemesio, it was only the beginning. Back in Mexico, he returned with sharper edges and darker ambitions. He aligned himself with the Michoacán cartel, a rising group connected to Mexico's powerful drug networks. Here, Nemesio learned the business of power, blood, and betrayal. Unlike others, he was not loud. He was not flamboyant. He was disciplined, quiet, calculating. The kind of man who waited, then struck without warning. Among cartel circles, his reputation grew. Ruthless when needed. Loyal when it mattered. A man who could be trusted to finish what he started. Yet, in Mexico's underworld, loyalty never lasts. Factions splintered. Leaders fell. And Nemesio saw an opportunity buried in the chaos. From the ashes of the Michoacán cartel, he began laying the foundations of something new. Something deadlier. Something the world would soon come to know as CJNG. To his enemies, he was becoming a shadow of death. To his allies, he was a figure of order and fear. To the government, just another name on a list. But beneath the surface, his empire was stirring. His methods: discipline, precision, and merciless violence. And so, from a farmer's son with nothing, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes began his transformation. The man who would soon be called the new king of Mexico's cartels. But this was only the beginning. Because Nemesio's rise would not come quietly, it would come with fire, blood, and open war. In the late 2000s, Mexico's criminal underworld was unraveling. The Milenio cartel, once powerful, began to splinter. Leaders were captured. Factions turned on each other. And in the smoke of betrayal, a new figure stepped forward, El Mencho. Nemesio saw what others missed: opportunity. He gathered loyalists, armed them, trained them, and promised one thing: power through discipline and blood. This new force called themselves the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG. Their message was simple: they were not just another cartel. They were the future. CJNG's birth was baptized in violence. Their enemies were hunted, tortured, executed, and their deaths broadcast to the world in chilling videos. El Mencho understood terror as strategy. Every massacre was not just a killing, it was a message carved in fear. In Guadalajara, CJNG unleashed its fury. Rivals disappeared overnight. Bodies hung from bridges. Streets were left soaked in blood. They didn't just want power. They wanted domination. And their tactics stunned Mexico: convoys of armored trucks, soldiers in military gear, weapons of war. Unlike cartels before, CJNG fought in the open. They confronted police in broad daylight. They shut down cities with burning barricades. In 2011, they made their presence known to the world with a chilling display: 35 bodies dumped in Veracruz, left for all to see. It was a declaration: CJNG had arrived. And they would not be ignored. Police forces tried to resist. But CJNG didn't just fight them, they humiliated them. Entire units were ambushed, outgunned, and slaughtered. El Mencho's cartel also mastered propaganda. Videos flooded the internet, rows of gunmen pledging loyalty, flaunting weapons, daring rivals and authorities alike. And while the violence raged, CJNG's influence spread. From Michoacán to Jalisco, and across state lines, they moved with speed and brutality. Whispers spread: El Mencho was not just another narco. He was something different. Patient. Invisible. Strategic. A man who built an army while staying in the shadows. And so, by 2012, the world knew his name. El Mencho had transformed a splinter group into Mexico's deadliest new cartel. But this was only the beginning. For CJNG was about to declare war not just on rivals, but on the state itself. By 2015, El Mencho's army no longer fought in the shadows. They were bold, ruthless, and unafraid to strike the state itself. In Jalisco, a convoy of soldiers moved to intercept a cartel cell. But CJNG was waiting. From the treeline, gunfire erupted. In minutes, a Mexican military helicopter fell from the sky. It was the first time a cartel had ever shot down a government aircraft. Mexico was stunned. The message was clear: CJNG would fight the state like an equa. El Mencho's men didn't stop there. They unleashed narco blockades, seizing highways, burning buses, shutting down entire cities in broad daylight. Guadalajara, Mexico's second-largest city, became a war zone overnight. Roads choked with flames. Citizens trapped in their homes as gunmen patrolled the streets. Across Jalisco, Michoacán, and Colima, CJNG spread fear. Checkpoints were erected not by the army, but by the cartel. Police forces found themselves outgunned. In ambushes, CJNG soldiers wielded rocket launchers, Barrett .50 caliber rifles, and military-grade explosives. The brutality was staggering. Police officers were captured, tortured, executed, sometimes with their deaths filmed and broadcast as warnings. Government attempts to strike back often failed. Corruption ran deep. Informants leaked operations. And El Mencho always vanished before the authorities arrived. To the people of Jalisco, CJNG became both a nightmare and a twisted form of order. In some towns, they punished petty criminals. In others, they massacred entire families. The government labeled CJNG as Mexico's most dangerous cartel. The DEA soon followed, branding El Mencho America's most wanted fugitive. El Mencho now ranked alongside El Chapo as the most powerful narco in the world, but unlike Guzman, he never sought the spotlight. While El Chapo flaunted power, El Mencho remained invisible. No public appearances. No photographs. Just fear, whispers, and violence that carried his name. And so, Mexico found itself at war not just with cartels, but with a cartel that fought like an army. CJNG was rewriting the rules. But El Mencho's war with the state was only one battle. As his enemies fell, his empire grew. And soon, his reach would stretch far beyond Mexico's borders. By the mid-2010s, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel was no longer just a regional threat. It was a machine. An empire that stretched far beyond the mountains of Mexico. El Mencho knew the future of drug trafficking was not cocaine or heroin alone. It was methamphetamine and fentanyl, synthetic poisons that could be produced in secret labs and shipped worldwide. CJNG labs multiplied across Mexico. Remote ranches were transformed into factories of death. Their product flowed north, stronger, cheaper, deadlier than anything before. In the United States, overdoses surged. Entire communities were ravaged. And behind the devastation stood El Mencho's cartel, counting profits in the shadows. But CJNG wasn't just feeding demand. They were building connections across oceans, shipping routes to Europe, Australia, and Asia. In ports from Manzanillo to Veracruz, cartel operatives bribed customs officials, slipped drugs through containers, and grew their global reach. Money poured in. Billions. And with it came weapons, allies, and power. CJNG's war chest rivaled that of small nations. Unlike cartels of the past, CJNG ran like a corporation. Cells reported upward. Orders flowed downward. Discipline was brutal, but effective. Across Mexico, rivals fell. Los Zetas fractured. The Beltran Leyva organization collapsed. Even Sinaloa, El Chapo's mighty empire, found itself challenged. CJNG's strategy was ruthless. Where rivals bribed, they killed. Where others hesitated, they struck with overwhelming force. El Mencho himself became a ghost. He left no photos, no recordings, no public footprint. To the world, he was more myth than man. In his absence, legends grew. Some said he lived deep in the mountains, moving camp every night. Others whispered he was always one step ahead of the DEA. The DEA placed a $10 million bounty on his head. Yet despite the money, the man known as El Mencho remained untouchable. With every failed operation, every missed capture, his legend only grew. He was no longer just the leader of a cartel. He was a phantom king. And as his empire spread across continents, one truth became clear: El Mencho had surpassed El Chapo. He was the new king. And the world had yet to grasp the cost of his reign. El Mencho is alive, or so the whispers say. Some claim he is gravely ill, hidden in the mountains. Others believe he walks freely among his men, untouchable. Government raids intensify. Entire towns are locked down. Yet every time the state draws near, El Mencho slips away. Some say he has protectors deep within the government. That corruption shields him as much as his army does. CJNG's violence shows no signs of slowing. Towns across Michoacán, Jalisco, Guanajuato, they bleed under the cartel's iron grip. In Guanajuato, CJNG's war against Santa Rosa de Lima cartel turned highways into killing fields. Hundreds of bodies left in shallow graves. Fentanyl, their deadliest export, floods into the United States. A crisis of addiction and death, and yet the flow only grows stronger. The DEA calls CJNG the single most dangerous cartel in the world. Not just for their drugs, but for their willingness to fight like an army. El Mencho himself remains unseen. No interviews. No courtrooms. No leaked videos. Just silence, broken only by violence that carries his name. Meanwhile, his family rises. His wife, Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, accused of managing cartel finances. His children, targeted by U.S. indictments. His son, El Menchito, sits in U.S. custody. His daughter, Lesha, allegedly runs parts of the financial empire. But the father remains a ghost. Some believe El Mencho's death will shatter CJNG. Others fear it will only unleash chaos as lieutenants battle for the throne. Mexico stands at a crossroads. The people, weary of endless violence. The government, struggling against an enemy it cannot see. And so, one question remains, is El Mencho a man? Or has he become something more, an idea, a phantom, a name whispered in fear? What is certain is this: his rise reshaped Mexico's underworld. His empire spans continents. And his legend is still being written. This was the rise of El Mencho, the farmer's son who became the phantom king of Mexico's deadliest cartel. The story is not over. The shadow remains. If you want more stories like this, make sure to like this video, share it with others, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for the next one.